Live from the Telecommunications Center at Oklahoma State University, you can profit from international trade. This video conference is produced through the cooperation of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Oklahoma State University Center for International Trade Development, and University Extension, Oklahoma State University. Today's moderator is Bill Mitchell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Mitchell. We are here today and at 23 locations around the state to discuss an important issue in the economic development of Oklahoma. We all know of the state's economic troubles and the desperate need to diversify our business and industry. We need to do that in order to stabilize our economy and generate jobs. International trade may be the key which unlocks doors to more jobs for Oklahomans. Today, we hope to come up with answers to the following questions, like, how important is international trade to the Sooner State? What stake do we have in it? What about the trade missions to Japan, India, China, Great Britain, and elsewhere? What have they done for the state? What future does Oklahoma have in international trade? We are able to bring this group together because we are using the high-tech telecommunication system which is located on the campus of Oklahoma State University. Joining us today in the studios to take part in this program are the Honorable George Nye, Governor of the state of Oklahoma; Mr. Jim Malone, President of Facet Industries in Tulsa; State Representative David Craighead; Willie Okrazek, who is with Morgan Granfield Investment Bankers; and Mr. Bill Moss of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. Dr. Francis Tuttle is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. He joins us now to discuss the importance of international trade and the value of a video teleconference like this one.
The Oklahoma Department of Commerce is delighted to be a part of this teleconference and to have the opportunity to join with others in trying to convey why we think international trade and development is so important to the economic future of Oklahoma. Oklahoma's industries in 1983 alone had over $2.5 billion in sales of export-related products, and nearly 11% of our manufacturing workforce, 20,000 workers, produced those products. There will be others who will go into further detail, but I want you to know that our newly organized department, the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, feels very strongly that attracting foreign investments to our state and assisting Oklahoma companies in finding new markets for their products is something that can produce results in the short term, and also to help strengthen and bolster the economy of our state. Today, it is extremely important that we remember we are all operating in a global economy, and those companies which recognize this will have the best chance of succeeding over the long term. Keep in mind that the state of Oklahoma and its departments are here to serve you. The Oklahoma Department of Commerce's new headquarters are at 6601 Broadway Extension in Oklahoma City. Plus, we have an office in Tulsa and 5 international trade offices throughout the world. We have many programs available to assist you as you enter or continue your efforts in the international marketplace. We sincerely hope that you enjoy this teleconference and that you will reap the benefits as a result of having been a part of it. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Jack Craig, President of the State Board of Agriculture. Jack?
Thank you, Dr. Tuttle. I, too, am pleased to be a part of this unique teleconference spotlighting Oklahoma's opportunities in the international marketplace. The Market Development Division of the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture has as one of its responsibilities that of assisting exporters and potential exporters of Oklahoma agriculture products. It is an area that the department is putting more emphasis on as we look to new and innovative programs to assist our agriculture producers. We have a staff of agriculture market development coordinators that are responsible for the development, implementation, and the promotion of an export marketing program. Our coordinators are individuals with experience in agriculture marketing, economics, public relations, promotion, and closely related fields. Their assistance includes, among other things, that of attending international food trade shows with Oklahoma exporters or serving as representatives of our exporters at trade shows. Number 2 is working with other state, regional, and national marketing groups to provide producers, processors, and manufacturers with technical assistance. Number 3 is assisting exporters in obtaining information on various subjects such as transportation, packaging, finance, international trade agreements, and foreign marketing techniques. Number 4 is working with the Foreign Agricultural Service of the United States Department of Agriculture and other federal agencies in the development of foreign markets. Number 5 is coordinating the distribution of foreign trade inquiries for agriculture products to interested exporters. 6 is assisting foreign importers in determining sources and quantities of products available. Number 7 is analyzing current export and import trends. Number 8 is promoting export marketing through cooperation with private industry, transportation companies, and the banking community. One of the primary functions of the division is locating potential buyers and getting them together with Oklahoma exporters. This is primarily done by exhibiting Oklahoma products at various world trade shows, which are attended by buyers from virtually every country in the world. Once a buyer expresses interest in a product, this information is shared with Oklahomans who can deliver the product requested. The division may assist further by arranging meetings or helping both parties understand various details and requirements of international trade. But they stop short of actually being involved in the financial negotiations. This is left up to the contracting parties exclusively. Another activity of the division is to search for potential exporters. Many agriculture businesses are not aware of the potential their product may have in the international market. We are always looking for products that might sell internationally because of its uniqueness or a need in a particular part of the world. A recent conference on international finance was the first of its kind in Oklahoma. It is another avenue we are pursuing to educate our current exporters and to encourage potential exporters of commodities abroad. We are considering other such activities so that Oklahoma can truly be as competitive as possible in international trade. International trade is an exciting and ever-expanding area, and we are continually seeking new ideas and methods to export Oklahoma agriculture products and to be competitive in the international marketplace.
Thank you, Jack Craig and Dr. Tuttle. Dr. Tuttle used two key words that we would like you to remember, and that is global economy. How do we succeed in that global economy? Well, all we have to do is to look at what we've done in the past. Now let's get a more detailed view of that issue. There are two simple but persuasive reasons why firms should consider international trade development: more profit for themselves and more jobs at home. All other benefits stem from these: greater growth, enhanced competitiveness from worldwide competition, multiplier impacts on service and supplying firms, and larger tax revenues for community services. There are three major channels through which substantial amounts of foreign purchases come into the state and impact our communities. First is the export of manufactured goods and agricultural products and services. Second is international travel and tourism. Third is the investment of foreign companies and citizens in Oklahoma plants, real estate, and service businesses. Let's look at how Oklahoma is doing in international trade. The data we're using is mostly for 1983 because it's the most recent available for the manufacturing sector. During 1983, Oklahoma manufacturers' indirect sales sold goods worth an estimated $1.6 billion to foreign buyers. Another $945 million of output was attributed to export sales by out-of-state firms which bought Oklahoma-made products for resale or as components for further processing. These export sales place Oklahoma 25th in the nation and account for a substantial amount of the state's average manufacturing employment. Direct export sales are related to more than 11,000 manufacturing jobs. In addition, more than 8,000 manufacturing jobs are in supporting industries. Another 27,000 non-manufacturing jobs were required for these exports. To put it another way, more than 3% of the state's civilian labor force works at jobs related to Oklahoma-produced manufacturing exports. Three sectors accounted for 78% of Oklahoma's direct export product sales in 1983. Of course, a large number of specific products are contained in these categories. The non-electrical machinery companies, including large oil and gas field equipment, dominated manufacturing exports with almost $650 million in direct sales and another $128 million in indirect sales. Second was petroleum and coal products, which saw a phenomenal increase from $17 million to $463 million. Food and kindred products placed third with total export sales of $169 million. A recent Oklahoma State University survey showed more than half of Oklahoma's exporters are active in 1 to 10 foreign markets, while 1 out of 5 sold in more than 20 different countries. The survey indicated Oklahoma's major export markets are Canada, Mexico, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Saudi Arabia. Nationally, the top 10 U.S. markets are very similar, but include South Korea and the Benelux countries of Europe. Trade in agricultural products is vitally important too. Both the U.S. and Oklahoma ag market sectors are deeply integrated into the international marketplace. Oklahoma's share of this market in fiscal year 1984 was $724 million out of the U.S. total of $38 billion. However, recent figures show agricultural exports declining to a 9-year low, while import figures were at an all-time high. Wheat and wheat products clearly dominate the value of the state's exports of agricultural commodities. As much as 80% or more of the locally produced hard red winter wheat is thought to be exported. In addition, meat, live animals, and other ag products are in demand by foreign consumers in both the industrially advanced and less developed countries. Turning to another channel of international exchange, direct foreign investment is defined as ownership of 10% or more of an enterprise's voting stock by a foreign resident. Though such reverse investment, as it is frequently called, is often a subject of some controversy, many states and cities see it as a way to increase jobs and tax revenues without luring away domestic companies from other U.S. cities. Oklahoma and other states have already benefited from the presence of foreign-owned firms. From 1974 to 1983, the average annual increase in employment provided by these companies was 17% in Oklahoma, compared to 9% nationally. In 1983, almost 28,000 Oklahoma workers were employed by these establishments. The 3 largest foreign employers in Oklahoma are Canada, the United Kingdom, and West Germany. Nationally, Japan and the United Kingdom remain the largest sources of foreign investment. Oklahoma's foreign-owned investments are concentrated in chemicals and allied products, retail trade, and wholesale trade. High-technology industries also serve as a powerful magnet for foreign savings. Although there is some concern with U.S. land being owned by foreign citizens, the Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that less than 1% of U.S. farms and forest land is foreign-owned. Finally, the U.S. Travel and Tourism Administration estimates that nearly 21 million foreign visitors came to the U.S. in 1984 and spent nearly $14 billion. The same survey indicates that about 85,000 of these visitors came to Oklahoma for at least an overnight stay. About half were from Canada and Mexico, the other half from overseas. In summary, these facts indicate many Oklahoma businesses have developed a substantial foreign market penetration. Many have learned that exporting can offset domestic cyclical and seasonal demand. If managed with consistent attention and a reasonable investment, international trade can provide a sustained source for market growth. With reasonable effort, determination, and a willingness to challenge the unknowns in what may be a new way of doing business, many more of our smaller and larger firms can capture the benefits of the export market. And now let's turn some of those statistics and graphics into real life as we look at some of the Oklahoma companies who are very involved in international trade, and they are surviving tough times because they are able to generate business from that global economy that we mentioned just moments ago. Here's a look at that tape.
We've been exporting for 26 or 27 years now. At the present time, Europe, all of Western Europe, Australia, some to the Middle East, Africa, and South America. But I do remember that in the beginning, we didn't have the expertise or the knowledge as to how you did that. And so we engaged the resources of an export management firm in Denver, Colorado, to help us in that respect. And so for about 4 or 5 years in the beginning, they handled all the paperwork and helped us with the financing and that sort of thing. After a while, we began to learn how to do it and hired one person in the beginning and have been doing all of that ever since. Our own financing, our own paperwork, and field contacts and all those sort of things. So it was a matter of just gaining experience as the business itself grew. We've used the Department of Commerce a number of times. They've been particularly helpful in making introductions, and the utilization of the resources they do have available have been helpful to us. We have been reasonably sophisticated for quite a number of years and have not needed some of the basic tools that somebody that was just beginning would need. But particularly the part of being part of state government adds a certain ambiance to introductions, and particularly you're dealing, some of our overseas customers are government agencies themselves, and being associated with or represented by local government is always helpful in that respect. Those industries that do have the wherewithal to manage and support export markets, state government, it's very helpful. And I believe it's one of the functions of state government that has the resources across the board, and the contacts particularly. It's particularly helpful if they do participate in that. I've been highly supportive of what Governor Nye has been doing the last few years with regard to using his knowledge and his ability in building bridges to areas around the world for us. I think he's done an excellent job of that sort of thing.
The name of the company is Cosmetic Specialty Labs, Inc. We produce aloe, or aloe vera, or salvia. There's many names for it, but our main ingredient is aloe vera. I've been involved for 10 years in international. For the last 5 years, I've been heavily involved in it. 20% of our business is international. We're in Malaysia. I just returned from a convention in Guatemala and Honduras. We're in Germany was our first account. We're in Switzerland, Norway, Finland. We have a new contract coming up on Finland. How many more? We're in 17 countries. First of all, I was involved with SBA doing seminars for women business owners. And through that, I met many people that was involved in government. And they began to tell us of all the benefits that we could have by looking into the government programs. And then when the governor's office hired Pam Warren to do some investigating and talk to small businesses, she was the first person that I really talked to on a state level. And their office went all out to help us. And when they had this new computer program where they had the telex available for small businesses, we subscribed to their service, which was very, very small amount of money. And from there, we just started getting all kinds of help. The Department of Commerce, where Ron Wilson is involved on state level and federal level, they have, the main thing they've helped us with is they've educated us. They took the fear out of being in international trade. People shouldn't be afraid of international trade. It's just as simple as it is in the United States. It's just a matter of language barriers, and we have a young man who speaks 6 languages on our staff, and that has really helped, because when we get an international call, he translates for us, and then we have a telex, and we have a young lady named Stephanie McIntyre who does all of the detail work and stays in contact with the government agencies. And we attend every seminar that we can. The Department of Commerce has supported us all the way with information, with credit references on us, not our credibility. They have helped build it, because we have been able to have international people visit the Department of Commerce. They've been most receptive. They have built a goodwill with our clients that we never could have built without them. You just need to get acquainted with those people. I definitely feel there's a large market on the horizon, and especially in our business, and of course many, many others, because they're eager to have American-made goods. Americans we have kind of let them take over in one sense, and yet the thing that I find that is so wonderful is that they absolutely want American-made products, and the thing that they have us put on the label is made in USA. So we have a lot of pride, and we should really take advantage of made in the United States. I would recommend international trade to all small businesses, because the knowledge, the information is available. Our state and federal government wants to help us, and it's up to us to make that step to seek out and find the information that they have available for us.
My name is Larry Scott, and I'm the owner of Scott Farms at Duke, Oklahoma. We're a family farming operation that's diversified into the gourmet food and specialty food end. And what we produce is beans and spices, and with these combinations produce a lot of different gourmet foods, specialty foods, Southwest type foods, Cajun foods. We've been in business, now farming as such, we've been in business about 11, 12 years in this end. But in the gourmet food line, it's been almost 5 years. And we market all in approximately 30 states here in the United States and into Canada. And we are also working for the overseas markets now, too. It was approximately 2 years ago, and with the Department of Commerce and our State Department of Agriculture here in Oklahoma, they contacted us about overseas marketing and thought we had the kind of product that would go overseas, especially with regional foods becoming so popular. And we started pursuing it, and we've gone to like the San Francisco International Wine and Food Show and the NASDA, which is the State Department of Agriculture food shows, which are international, and worked with the various export departments like the Department of Commerce. We're working with some German clients overseas at this time, and with the State Department of Agriculture, that they're working with us on some people in Saudi Arabia. So it's mainly Europeans where that looks the most promising for us at the present. It's the wave of the future as far as especially in the food end. Value-added products, we can ship our value-added products and do a much better job than we can just shipping the regular raw agriculture products. And it's a it's the real future for farmers.
Dencon Tool Company is a manufacturer of what we call rig floor handling tools. They're used on drilling rigs and well servicing and workover rigs to grip the pipe and work around the pipe area right on the drilling rig floor. We've been involved in the international marketplace since we started in 1978. I definitely see very large increases in sales as we become more and more widely known in the international market. We have been developing our credibility. People are getting used to us. They are used to the name now. They're used to the products. They've been using the products. It's a long-term effect of growth in building this credibility. But very definitely there are market areas today that are still very large and very viable for Dencon's business. Right now we're running approximately 80% of our volume is going into the international market. So this is the area that we are stressing right now. The Department of Commerce for the state of Oklahoma has been very, very helpful to us. The help has been especially in the international nationalized areas, for instance, the Indias and the Chinas and some of these that are nationalized entities as far as the drilling contractors and the oil companies. And they've been very good at providing information and data, as well as their trade missions with the opening of the doors to the private sector business people here in the state. I went on a trade mission in June that included China and India, and the governor was along on that trip also. Very exciting because we got to meet some very, very top-level people within these government entities that we never would have been able to reach on our own as a private sector company. It was basically handled on a government-to-government basis in these countries, and the fact that the governor was along, in addition to having the state sponsor the trade mission, just opened the doors at the highest levels. And we literally saved 5 years at least, I believe, in trying to get to see some of these people. We have been aggressively working in the international market since 1982 as far as trips and personal contacts. And yet I believe we've accomplished more in the last 6 months in working in conjunction with the Department of Commerce and through these trade missions and these efforts and tying the whole packages together. It's been a tremendous help to us. And small and medium companies especially need the help because they are not what I call the big names. They do not have worldwide recognition. And so as a result, any assistance that they can get just saves them a tremendous amount of time and effort. And above all, it may save them some false starts. It may provide them with some contacts, but they do not lose the time and the efforts by not knowing the marketplace. I would absolutely recommend the international marketplace. It's still a very viable market. There are tremendous amounts of equipment that is required, expertise that is required, services that are required, and a lot of countries have in their plans have allocated the monies to get this technology and increase their productivity. And so small and medium companies are very, very important in the international market, and it will be there for a long time.
You heard the word mentioned several times, international trade missions. What are they? How do they get organized, and how do they go about accomplishing their mission? For answers to those questions and more, we turn to Bill Moss. He is Director of International Trade for the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. He is a veteran of over 20 foreign trade missions. Bill?
Bill, an international trade mission is a highly organized group of individuals that usually are composed of the private sector, both in industry as well as government officials, to travel to foreign markets for prearranged meetings to discuss trade, and trade mission primary goals are to create jobs for Oklahomans in Oklahoma. This can be divided into two basic categories. The trade missions consist of an export trade mission to sell Oklahoma products and related technology to foreign firms or foreign governments, and also the sale of Oklahoma wheat in Korea or oil field equipment in China are examples of those kinds of trade missions. Secondly, the second type trade mission is a reverse investment mission. This type of mission is designed to find capital investment from foreign markets for investment in Oklahoma. A location of the plant, the Hitachi plant in Norman, is a good example of that type of mission, a reverse investment mission. Trade missions are usually organized through the Department of Commerce and also through the Department of Agriculture. And in the past few years, the governor of the state of Oklahoma has led delegations to these foreign countries. It's extremely important that we note the tremendous impact that the governor can have on such a delegation. Keep in mind that when we're on a trade mission to foreign lands, that we're negotiating with a different set of rules than we have in a domestic market. For example, in Japan, Oklahoma business can deal directly with the Japanese business. However, if we're in India, the Oklahoma firms may deal directly with private sector firms, but they must have government approval. In China, it's completely different. Oklahoma businesses must negotiate directly with government ownership. So you can see that it's extremely important that the state of Oklahoma have a government relationship with those kinds of nations. We must keep a friendly relationship. And also in those trade missions, 6 months to a year is a good lead time to develop a trade mission of this sort. They're usually handled through the Governor's International Advisory Team or the District Export Council on the federal side, and the states and business interests work together to try to determine the objectives and the goals and to try to determine the specific locations as to where we go for these type of trade missions. Traditionally, the trade missions stay together for the entire time. They, as a matter of fact, work together. They develop their time together and then spend sometimes as much as 2 weeks. Other times, shorter missions are planned and developed. The mission delegations have a series of meetings, including calling on prearranged businesses. They have receptions, they have seminars, such as you see that have been held on previous missions. We also have prospect meetings to educate foreign business about Oklahoma and its opportunities, the business climate in Oklahoma. Another example of the trade mission is the use of the trade show. I've just recently returned from a trade show in New Delhi, India, where we had 26 Oklahoma manufacturers represented there. They exposed their products to over 4 million people in that exhibition. Governor Nye in September led a delegation of about 50 Oklahomans to England. That effort was designed to bring reverse investment to our state. The missions per se are designed to bring attention to the state of Oklahoma. The investment missions primarily are important to the future of Oklahoma. The trade missions themselves, through the Governor's International Advisory Team, can be for state purposes. They can be for private business purposes, as mentioned previously.
What about our offices, our foreign offices, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, India, and England? And how do they work?
Bill, that in itself is an important part of the networking that exists. In the programs that you heard previously on the monitor, we have, as a matter of fact, a full-fledged program of education, which you heard from the local manufacturers, to ultimately the delivery system on the local scene, and that's the foreign offices. We have foreign offices in China, in Hong Kong, in Japan, in Singapore, in New Delhi, and in London. Those offices are designed to bring assistance directly to the Oklahoma businessman trying to do business in those marketplaces.
We have representatives here. Would you go ahead and introduce them?
It'd be my pleasure. First of all, today I'd like to introduce to you from our Japan office, Mr. Mike Ichigo. Mike, why don't you take just a moment and tell us about your marketplace?
Okay, thank you, Bill. The Oklahoma Japan office was opened in August 1985, last year, as the 28th American States office in Japan. And by now we have 35 American States offices in Japan. The most important objectives of our office is to enhance the Japanese manufacturers' investment in Oklahoma. And in order to achieve these objectives, we held so many events, such as we had 4 investment seminars in 3 different major Japanese cities, and we had 5 receptions in 4 cities in Japan, each time having a governor or lieutenant governor's delegation in Japan. Also, we arranged 2 big Japanese missions to Oklahoma. One is the MITI delegation. MITI stands for Ministry of International Trade and Industry, in March this year, and the other is the K-Danren's delegation to Oklahoma. That K-Danren means Federation of Economic Organization. They came to Oklahoma June this year. And in addition to these events, I personally made over 2,000 telephone calls to Japanese companies to ask them to locate their plants in Oklahoma and to find out potential investors in Oklahoma. And also I established about 120 appointments with them and visited with them and explained about the Oklahoma's investment environments. And also some of them, about 200 companies, requested the brochures of Oklahoma. So I submitted them with the details of Oklahoman information.
Mike, that's an excellent report, and we're pleased to have you with us from the Tokyo office, which the main mission of that office is to try to bring about the investment of dollars from Japan into U.S. to employ Oklahomans here in Oklahoma. Next, we have Robert Jenkins, who represents the state of Oklahoma in London.
Thank you, Bill. Morgan Grenfell has been working since July this year with the Department of Commerce and with the Oklahoma business community to identify business and investment opportunities. We have also been working to identify target companies in the United Kingdom and continental Europe that could have a real interest in those opportunities and in Oklahoma as a base and location for them for the U.S. market. We have been actively involved and engaged in the organization of the Oklahoma Business Mission to the United Kingdom at the end of September, led by Governor Nye, and we have recently embarked on a very extensive program of individual approaches to target companies throughout the United Kingdom and in continental Europe. We believe that this approach is likely to be the most effective way in which Oklahoma can attract international investment. And we also believe that Morgan Grenfell, as one of the leading British-based international merchant banks, can make a real contribution to the success of Oklahoma's program for 2 basic reasons. The first is with international presence in the Far East and Southeast Asia, and particularly as a market leader in the area of acquisitions and mergers in UK and continental Europe, and including the arrangement of international transatlantic investment transactions. That is of particular relevance. And if you look at the pattern and the big picture of foreign direct investment in the United States, Britain, the United Kingdom is the prime source of foreign direct investment, followed by Japan and the Netherlands and Switzerland. And so therefore we have particular good hopes and expectations for this particular assignment.
Now we've heard from our 2 major sources of reverse investment in our office network. Next, we go to a different concept. Here we have 3 additional office representatives, or 3 additional countries represented that are primarily export market offices for us. First of all, I'd like for you to meet Mr. John Cheek, who represents Oklahoma in Singapore.
Thank you, Bill. Our Singapore office covers the ASEAN region. The ASEAN region comprises of about 6 countries: Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Brunei, Philippines, and Indonesia. All these countries are pretty active in the oil and gas production, as well as the exploration side of the activities. Indonesia itself produces about 1.2 million barrels of oil per day, and the rest of the country produce about 0.6 million barrels. Now, this country also produce and export most of the world gas to Japan and surrounding countries. Singapore, although is not an oil producer, she is the 3rd largest oil refinery in the whole world. As you can see, all these countries will give you a big market for export of the oil and gas equipment and services to this region. The Singapore office would provide a role to encourage and possibly increase this sector of the industries. The Singapore office also would welcome any businessman who are not in the oil and gas sector in penetrating into this region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Now you can see that there is a strong reason for an office in Singapore. Oklahoma has 37% of its manufacturing base geared to build oil and gas equipment. It's because of that strength in our economy that we must try to diversify that economy into the international marketplace to help existing industry survive. And John and the others who are filling that void are a great asset to the state of Oklahoma. Next, I'd like to introduce to you from our Hong Kong office, Mr. Hallett. Keith Hallett is with the Morgan Granfell office in Hong Kong. Keith?
Thanks, Bill, very much indeed. In Hong Kong, we look after the interests of Oklahoma in Hong Kong itself, in Taiwan, and in the People's Republic of China. We have on our staff about 20 Chinese speakers who are fluent in Mandarin and some of the other mainland Chinese dialects. I think it might be interesting if I just briefly said a little bit about what we hope to do for Oklahoma in China, which I think most of us would agree is one of the most important long-term markets for Oklahoma. The important thing about China is that it's a centrally planned economy, and that means that most of the time one has to deal with government organizations. And another point that I think was brought up earlier on in the program is that one of the problems of marketing internationally is the time it takes and the resources that companies must allocate to it. What we look to do is to work at the sharp end of a company's marketing strategy and to find out, for example, that the buyers that he's talking to are creditworthy, that the projects are likely to go ahead within the foreseeable future, and that the central authorities have allocated sufficient foreign exchange for those projects or contracts. I think we can help by working out on these problems so that the companies themselves can concentrate on the most important opportunities that arise for them. And we hope, therefore, to save them a lot of time in their marketing strategy.
Thank you very much, Keith. Next, it's a pleasure to introduce to you a lady that represents us very well in India, one of those markets that you've been hearing a great deal about in Oklahoma. She represents Oklahoma in a marketplace that is developing its oil and gas industry, as is Mr. Hallett in the Chinese market. I'd like to introduce to you Mrs. Leela Singh, who represents us in New Delhi.
Thank you, Bill. In India, we have what is known as a planned economy, which means that we have to work pretty closely with the government, particularly in the oil and gas field. And as a result, it is very essential for people who are used to working in what one might call free economies like yours to need interpretation and guidance as to how to work in that marketplace. The India office has been able to do this for a number of the concerns who have been through India in the last 6 months. Also, we need to have an exposure in India of what Oklahoma offers, and in Oklahoma, the opportunities that are available in India. The missions led by the governor, the trade fair exposure that we had recently, and the fact that this was the first American state that opened an office in India have had a tremendous impact on the business psyche in India. People have felt that this means that Oklahoma is really serious to try to go out of their way to work with India. Also it has resulted in 2 or 3 trade missions, which will come in the first 6 months of 1987. One is the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce led mission. One is a mission which is a VOTEC-sponsored mission. And a third will be a petroleum mission, which would be coming to the United States and diverting to Oklahoma. The petroleum and gas industry is very important to India, but I think it is necessary for Oklahoma to know that there are a lot of other industries, like electronics, like agricultural-oriented industries, and spin-offs that are areas which India is definitely interested in technology transfer, in joint ventures, and there is a tremendous market there if anybody is prepared to investigate it, and we would like to help you come to that market.
Thank you, Mrs. Singh. And Bill, I think you can see from that lineup that not only has Oklahoma got a good base of manufacturing to work from in that international marketplace, but it has a great opportunity for assistance in the marketplace with this lineup of people.
Bill Moss, thank you very much. Now our discussions turn to what we have accomplished from international trade over the past 4 years. For the answer to that question, we go to Governor George Knight. Governor?
Let me also express the gratitude for so many people listening and participating in this teleconference. As a school teacher background, I am very aware of the educational needs in Oklahoma. But I'm also concerned that if we have the obligation to provide an education and the learning of skills, don't we also have that same obligation as the government to try to help people put those skills and that education to work? Jobs is the #1 program. Jobs is the #1 matter that faces Oklahoma, and that's where the governor ought to be. I'm particularly pleased with the progress we've made in the past few years. A lot of people ask the questions about, don't we need to further diversify the economy of the state of Oklahoma? Some people question, well, why are we trying to create jobs overseas? Let me say that those are not necessarily the subject matter today. We're talking about jobs in Oklahoma. And we're talking about diversification, but not looking necessarily for new industry, but equally important, helping existing industry expand. One of the ways of diversification is to simply find an existing Oklahoma manufacturing concern or farmer and find a diversification of his marketplace. And the global economy is what we're talking about, the global marketplace. I'm very pleased these past few years of the support that we've gotten from the business community of Oklahoma as we try to go to diversify our economy by finding a marketplace for our products. Someone the other day called Senator Kerr visionary because of what he had done in the McClellan-Kerr navigation system, the largest public works contract or public works project in the country at the time. But did we build it for naught? Isn't that really built to have commerce go from Oklahoma as well as to come into Oklahoma? We can understand it in the wheat field. We produce more wheat than is necessary for Oklahoma. We produce more wheat than is necessary for the United States of America. And we've long been involved in the international marketplace in wheat. So we need to do the same thing in our products here. If our people are in trouble, as some of those that you've seen on previous tapes, know that they're in existence today because they went to the international marketplace. I'm very proud of the effort that we've put forth. I would say that our main handicap, though, many times is the image that the state has. Not that we have a bad one, but that we have none at all. We find our number one goal is just try to convince the people that there is an Oklahoma and tell them where it is and that they can do business here. The other goal is to convince Oklahoma business community that you can do business in the international marketplace, and we're here to help. We appreciate your participation today, but more important, we would enjoy your participation in the years ahead.
What number were we when we visited Japan, and what number were we when we visited India, and how important is it for a top government official to go along?
Well, when I called on Ambassador Mike Mansfield in Japan and walked in and said, "Hi, I'm Governor George Nye of Oklahoma," he didn't say, "Sit down and have coffee." He just said, "Where have you been?" He told me I was the 49th governor to lead a trade mission to Japan. So we were playing catch up there. They don't even know where Oklahoma is, except for Randy Bass, the great baseball player from Lawton that's brought us national attention over there. But when we went to India, it was a difference because we were the first one there. I became the first governor ever to lead a trade mission to India, and their response has been fantastic, is that the attention that we received, the fact that we're the first state there with an office, has indicated a great interest of Oklahoma, and it's paid off. I think what also would be important, Bill, if I could point out that we took a trade mission to Japan, and I had a press conference in the hotel in which we announced that we were there ready to do business. The same time, the governor of Georgia had a press conference, same hotel, different room, and announced the 163rd Japanese industry to locate in Georgia. Georgians at work in Georgia. We were just there saying, we're looking for one, and they announced the 163rd. We don't try to convince anyone to come to the United States. I didn't go to London and say, come to the United States. I didn't go to India and say, come to the United States. I'm telling people that if they're coming to the United States, come to Oklahoma. And on the other hand, we're also saying, if you're buying products, buy an Oklahoma-made product. And whether or not the governor's there helps. I'll let others discuss.
Okay. Thank you very much, Governor. Our next panelist is Jim Malone, president of Facet Enterprises of Tulsa. Jim, how important is international trade to your company?
Well, it's very important on two fronts. And I think there are two issues that I would answer that question regarding. One is a philosophical one as it relates to international trade, and we address that by simply saying that if you're in business, you're involved in international trade. Whether you like it or not, you're there. And you're either going to be victimized by somebody invading your own markets, or you can look at it as a source of supply to products that for you to sell, or just as importantly, as a future market. And from a philosophical standpoint, anybody who is in business who doesn't ask themselves those questions, I think is just kidding themselves as to whether or not they're influenced in the marketplace. And then the second point I would make, Bill, is our experience. And we have 4 operations in Europe, in Wales, in Holland, in Italy, in Spain. And through a recent acquisition, we've added to our existing presence in India. And we think that the future of our company's growth depends to a large extent on the way we integrate our international activities with our activities that are domestically based. And for a company to reach its full potential, both from a marketing standpoint and its competitive capabilities today, they have to integrate the international influence into their own domestic strategies and philosophies.
Jim, thank you very much. Our next panelist is State Representative David Craighead. He is chairman of the Joint Subcommittee on International Development in the state legislature. David.
Thank you very much. I have been very pleased to witness in the last 3 or 4 years a very increased interest in international involvements in the highest state levels in Oklahoma. Of course, the governor has been in the forefront of this. The Lieutenant Governor, Spencer Bernard, has been active in it for many years. And in the legislative arena, the pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House have, I think, done a very significant thing, and that is 2 years ago created what is called the Joint Special Committee on International Development in the legislature, composed of 7 members of the House, 7 members of the Senate. Our main activity for these 2 years has been to bring before the committee various people in international life in Oklahoma, whether it be international trade, agriculture, tourism, educational pursuits, the whole arena of international involvements. We've been gathering information, and soon we'll issue a printed report telling what we found and also giving our recommendations. A major piece of legislation enacted in the last year was the World Trade Development Authority Act, signed by the governor, and will go into effect January 1, 1987, very soon now. We believe this will be a major instrument for enabling small and medium-sized businesses to get the financing needed to be in international trade. This past January, the legislature, through the Speaker and the Pro Tem, sponsored the first World Trade Symposium ever conducted by the legislature. In fact, to my knowledge, I believe it to be the first day that the Oklahoma legislature set aside an entire day from other business during its regular session to study and learn about a subject of interest and importance to the state. That subject was international trade. We had speakers from as far away as Boston, Massachusetts, and they was such a success, received such a good welcome, not only from the legislature, but business leaders who attended, that we're going to do the same thing in January, the second annual World Trade Symposium, January the 13th. The spotlight this time will be on doing business with our Latin neighbors, which is very important. They're close to us. I think it's evident that the legislature has become thoroughly involved in international growth of the state. It's my personal belief that this will need to increase, and indeed will increase, in the days and years ahead. Thank you.
I'd like to kind of direct the conversation, Willie, you can join in, is where do we go from here in international trade? Anybody care to address that?
I'd like to say how happy I am to see these beautiful faces across from us today, representing very arduous efforts in contacts abroad to set up a link, a point in those countries where we can actually have constant communication and travel and develop trade. In answer to your question, it's going to be a top priority with me, and I feel in the legislature in the coming months, and I have invited these ladies and gentlemen to communicate with me directly to see that what has been started in this regard continues. And that's going to be, need to be a point of emphasis, I feel.
Governor?
Bill, I'd like to point out if the television would pan, excuse the expression, pan the 5 people that we're talking about, and I'd like to point out that Mr. Ichigo in Japan represents a legislative appropriation. The legislature authorized the office there in Japan, but the other 4 people are also authorized by our agreements, and they're paid from private funds for contracts with them, raised to the private sector, the various public trusts and authorities, chambers of commerce and business community. So we have here a government-private sector partnership in these people that are here, and I think that's important. And the Japanese office has been there, and we hope is permanently. The other 4 we hope will continue. They're really in an experimental stage. If they're successful, we think they'll be continued.
Jim?
Bill, international trade and economic development is a buzzword now that everybody likes to talk about. But I think it's important to emphasize that it really, from a legislative standpoint, is a bipartisan effort. And I think the governor has started something that is very, very important to be continued, regardless of the party in power or the power relationships, if you will. It's too important to have politics played with it. Not that that isn't a part of it, because it certainly is in our system or anybody's system. But it simply cannot go forward without the chief executive of the state being involved. And it was very important that what Governor and I did in terms of my personal experience in helping us open our plant in India, those kinds of things need to be continued and need to be pushed forward. And the chief executive is the only person that can do it.
There's a company in Tulsa called Nordam, and they, among other things, make portable hangars. And I went to Honduras recently, stepped off the plane at an air base in another country, and the first thing I saw was a hangar built in Oklahoma. We actually need more of that, especially in the oil and gas industry, which I heard mentioned 3 or 4 times from this panel.
Well, while you're speaking of Nordam, the interiors of all the China airlines are being refurbished by Nordam. In Tulsa, I went through AT&T in Oklahoma City the other day and saw their communication systems, and they put the names up on where they're going, and I walked down this long aisle, and here's Louisville, Kentucky, Miami, Florida, Boston, Massachusetts, and Beijing, China. And they just signed a multi-million-dollar contract in Singapore. Some people have the misconceptions we're creating jobs over there. We're creating jobs here, selling our products over there. And what our goal is to assist Oklahoma business community people, large and small, of how we can help them in the international marketplace. Our commerce can help them here, but these people are ready to welcome them to their countries, help them make appointments, and show them around. They're available. All they have to do is call the Department of Commerce.
Do you know of some businesses in Oklahoma that are in business today because of international business?
Well, Mr. Malone here is very big on it, but one of the gentlemen that you saw on the tape a while ago talked about 80% of his business is now international. 3 or 4 years ago, he wasn't even in the international marketplace. Mr. Denny has told us that personally, without the international marketplace, he wouldn't be here. If we hadn't gone overseas, he says his company wouldn't be in existence today.
Governor, thank you very much. We are doing so well at selling Oklahoma that we recently won a national award for it. It's called the E Award. Here's a tape on this morning's presentation.
Well, let me say welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Governor.
Nice to have you here, Mr. Bradford.
It's truly a pleasure being here. Thank you, Dr. Tuttle. I'm here representing the President of the United States and Secretary of Commerce Malcolm Baldridge to recognize the Oklahoma Department of Commerce for its outstanding contributions to the export expansion efforts of the United States.
Right.
But of course, Oklahoma is the flagship and the leader in our effort to broaden the export base within the United States. Your federal state program is the model. It's the model that we hope other states around the country will emulate. But we in Washington do appreciate the numerous activities that you have jointly developed to promote Oklahoma's exports. The one-stop service which you are providing will continue to provide long-term economic stability for the state and hopefully for the country. The business community will continue to profit from the trade missions and the trade shows, the seminars and the newsletters, the export conferences and the export counseling, market research and product research developments you've had, and the various export administration workshops. We congratulate you on your extraordinary success in promoting Oklahoma's exports, and you have demonstrated a commitment, an outstanding commitment of service to the Oklahoma's business community. And I repeat, you have set the example for the rest of the country. Your program is the model program, the model federal state program, which we hope to implement nationwide. So to recognize your achievements, I have the honor, in the name and by the authority of the President of the United States, to present the President's E Award for Excellence in Exporting to you, Governor.
Thank you
for the
very
Department
much.
of Commerce. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Please stand, please. Thank you.
Congratulations, Governor.
That was a total surprise. That just happened this morning at about 10:45. I was having my last final cabinet meeting, and Dr. Tuttle brought this gentleman in, and you can imagine my surprise.
Every time we get one of those, it means more jobs, right?
Oh, it means more jobs. That I think that we should point out, he said we were the model. We were the state that they were asking other states to pattern after, and that made me proud as an Oklahoman.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll take a 30-minute break right now. And before taking a break, we'd like to remind our group along the line that you'll have about 30 minutes to discuss what you've heard so far today. After that, we would like a minimum of 3 questions or a maximum of 5 questions from each of our location sites. Call in the questions to us here on the campus of Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. Get ready to write this number down. Area code 405-624-7101. You see it there, super on the bottom of your screen. 624-7101, area code 405. When we return, have somebody standing by your phone over there, because we will try to put as many of your questions, live on the air as possible. We will now recess for exactly 30 minutes, and we'll be back up on the satellite at 5 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock. We'll see you then.
Live from the Telecommunications Center at Oklahoma State University. You can profit from international trade. This video conference is produced through the cooperation of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Oklahoma State University Center for International Trade Development, and University Extension, Oklahoma State University. Today's moderator is Bill Mitchell.
Welcome back to our statewide video teleconference. The Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce has just completed a summit conference on economic development here in Oklahoma. Dick Rush is the new president and CEO of the state chamber. He joins us now. Dick?
Thank you very much, Bill. We are pleased by the momentum that we've gained at our annual meeting, which is actually the third step in a 4 or 5 phase strategic plan of the state chamber. And we today are looking at the international trade aspects of our program of work. Whether we like it or not, we are world citizens in Oklahoma, and therefore looking at job creation is the basic product of the State Chamber of Commerce. We are now hopeful that the 23 downlink sites that are here today that are watching this presentation, the State Chamber wants to thank each and every one of you, because as you well know, you can't sell Altus, Oklahoma, or Ardmore, Bartlesville, and all of the 23 sites, including Chickasha, Drumright, Duncan, Edmond, El Reno, Enid, Guyman, Hugo, Lawton, Muskogee, Norman, Oklahoma City, Okmulgee, Ponca City, Stillwater, Tahlequah, Tulsa, Veneta, Wayne, and Woodward. You are all there watching this. We would hope that there would be thousands at each site. We obviously are aware there are not. And that puts the burden smack on the shoulders of those who are listening today in the business community throughout this state to be involved in this process. We would encourage all local chambers in this viewing site to look at the program of the state chamber and in fact to begin to sell it. But the bottom rung of economic development, the basic foundation for which economic development and international trade can take place, is fundamentally got to go back to our work in the legislative arena. Because unless we can have a climate for business to come to Oklahoma or stay in Oklahoma and prosper and grow into larger companies, we must look at that economic climate as it's impacted by the legislation. And therefore, this legislative session is crucial to our efforts, the business community's efforts, and how effective all you've heard so far today is going to be implemented on Main Street in downtown USA, Oklahoma. And therefore, we'd ask the local chambers to consider following the next few items I'd like to refer to you. Number one, we would hope that you would, as indicated earlier, establish a good working relationship with the Department of Commerce from the governmental side. From the private sector side, from the state chamber side, we hope that you will work with us on the 12 issues that we in fact have adopted and will be working on throughout this legislative session. And those 12 issues quickly are right to work, We need a right-to-work law in this state. As one of our British friends said to me earlier today, isn't it American that you have the freedom to choose? Second is tort reform. The third is workers' compensation. The fourth is tax concerns of all kinds, and particularly the ad valorem tax reform to ensure that there is justice in that taxing process. The highway funding is another one that's been adopted, the Little Davis-Bacon Act, which must ensure our competition and jobs. The education reform that's necessary in this state, capital financing and venture capital, all of these various programs to keep the cost of medical care down to employers in the state, environmental rules and regulations. These were adopted by the Board of Directors of the State Chamber. They can only be accomplished through the input and work at the local community level. And if these changes are to be made, the one basic product and the one basic signal that we will send to the rest of the country and to the world is that Oklahoma cares about its business community and it means business, and that we have the forethought and the justice orientation in our legislature that will allow for the prosperous businesses in this state. So we ask your help and assistance in that arena. The third step we would ask you to consider is attending the next phase of our pre-session plan, and that's going to occur on January 13th in Oklahoma City. This is what we're calling our legislative caucus, and from 2 to 5 in the afternoon we'll be having a workshop on these specific issues for local chambers, and then that evening we will invite our legislative delegation in and discuss with them the key issues that they'll be dealing with in the session. It's not too early to discuss and meet with our legislators. In fact, it's time to do it now rather than having to react as the legislative session gets going on into its later days. The fourth item we would ask you to continue to do is to communicate, to continue to tell the story of Oklahoma, to begin to bring the pride back that we should have in this state. And in fact, we have a videotape that we have prepared, and it is available. It was shown at the annual meeting. It's an 11-minute videotape telling the good news about Oklahoma and what is happening here, and that is available free of charge to all local chambers in this state. So we would ask you to contact us for a copy of that. This is the time for Oklahoma really now to act. This conference is happening not by coincidence. It is time when our business community can understand the need to reach beyond Main Street, and we would ask local chambers to be productive in that arena. It's time for Oklahoma business to unite together and to broaden our focus on the economy and not look at the certain regions of the state only or the certain industries of the state, but in fact to look at the overall economy. It's time for Oklahoma really now to show the world that it does care about job creation and that we do mean business. So we're pleased that you're here today, and please work with us at the State Chamber in future days to improve the situation we have on Main Street. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Educating our people so they can be more effective in international trade is very important to selling Oklahoma's products in world markets. At the same time, it provides an excellent climate for attracting new investment. Here at Oklahoma State University, a new Center for International Trade Development has been formed. Its purpose is to coordinate university programs that contribute to international trade development. Here to tell us about this important center is OSU President Dr. Larry Boger.
We at Oklahoma State University are pleased to host and co-sponsor today's teleconference on international trade development. For me, the program is significant for at least two reasons. It has highlighted the need for more research and marketing efforts to develop foreign sales and at the same time showcase the satellite telecommunications technology available for that purpose. I think you'll agree that there is a growing influence of international events on the fortunes of many of our industries. As Congressman Wes Watkins said in the Symposium on International Trade Development earlier this year, global competition is a fact of life.
We must prepare our country to compete in truly a worldwide economy. It is a competitive world, and the competition is prepared, and the competition is tough. If the U.S. remains a world power and a world leader in trade, we must arm our citizens, our business and industrial leaders, especially our small and medium-sized business and industrial leaders, with the knowledge to answer the unknowns of how to enter and compete in the world marketplace with their exports.
Most firms in our agricultural, marketing, and natural resources sectors are now directly dependent on foreign markets or pressured by tough import competition. Other businesses feel this pressure in a more indirect but highly significant way. Many of our people you've seen on this program are Oklahomans already actively involved in international trade. They've made their decision, committed their personnel and financing to be competitive in global markets. In a similar way, Oklahoma State University has made the same commitments. With strong support from Congressman Watkins and our own Board of Regents, we formed a Center for International Trade Development and made the decision to develop teaching, research, extension, and public service programs that will help Oklahoma compete and excel in the varied economic systems, cultures, and climates of foreign nations. For Oklahoma State, international involvement is nothing new. For years, we've been involved in international programs. Our faculty have offered courses that provided students with international perspectives. Much basic research has been developed and exchanged with foreign scholars. And we've developed extension foreign contacts through our own direct export activity, the education of international students. Both our curriculum and the attitudes of students have grown increasingly international. Nevertheless, student interest is far from universal, and much remains to be done. In the selection of research programs, our faculty are being encouraged to identify projects that help Oklahoma businesses produce new products or adapt existing ones for the tastes and specifications of foreign buyers. We have research and outreach programs in business areas that can help identify strategies for entering foreign markets and attracting foreign investors. International studies and programs can sharpen skills for personal interaction and negotiation with cultural awareness and sensitivity. In addition to these areas, OSU's Center for International Trade Development will have two more significant dimensions. First, the center will provide a trained professional staff, specialized information, and other resources to help business people interested or involved in international trade. And second, within a few short years, the center will be in a new campus facility with state-of-the-art computing and telecommunications equipment. It will have flexible workspaces for OSU personnel and firms and agencies committed to achieving Oklahoma's economic development goals through international involvement. As a service unit of the university, the center will coordinate and augment the applied research and extension programs of the colleges. Center personnel will cooperate with other government agencies and private services to expand opportunities for the state's exportable products and services. However, our goal is to complement, not duplicate, services already available from these agencies. We welcome your ideas for programs and activities, as well as requests for assistance in using the resources of your university. The center's address and telephone number are listed in the information packet which you have. Whether you're engaged in the first attempts at international trade involvement or more advanced evaluations of new markets or product line extensions, we're working hard to provide the space, equipment, and people so that you can utilize the public resources available here at Oklahoma State University.
We have now added to our distinguished panel. Joining us now is Annabelle Wiedemann, coordinator of the international trade for the State Board of Agriculture. Thank you very much for being with us. Willie Okrazek, I hope I got that right again, Willie, I'm sorry. Do you have anything that you'd like to add now as an investment banker?
Well, I would just, Bill, if I may, I would just like to say a few words for the benefit of all our listeners and lookers here. I would just like to give a very brief explanation what I'm doing in Japan. I'm heading the corporate finance activities of Morgan Grenfell in Japan, And in this capacity, I have an access to a corporate customer or client base of about 300 of the country's top companies. And to make really this access, I mean, may every now and then create opportunities or bring up things which are of benefit to Oklahoma. And if that sort of thing comes up, then it would be a close cooperation or indeed a complementary activity to my Kichigo in order to create benefit for Oklahoma. I wanted to say a little bit more about Japan earlier on, but I think that in our question and answer session, I think there will be enough time to go on to that, and I think we can do that later.
Okay, well, we'll start right off the bat because we have a ton of questions coming in from the folks in our centers. The number one question, we've gotten this several times, who pays for the 15 to 35 member trade mission? This is the Governor Nye. And why are we promoting international investment in Oklahoma? Why do we need foreign money?
Well, of course, the answers to who pays would depend upon the individual person, but like when we went to England, we had about a 50-member delegation. The vast majority, 35 to 40 of them, were private sector people who paid their own way. If we went to the People's Republic of China and we were on a government-to-government relationship, then the various agencies paid that. A lot of the entertaining expenses and some of the travel expenses of support personnel has been paid by private funds that we've raised through the Compact Authority. We raised over $1 million to support the international effort. I think that we almost need to quit asking who pays for it and just say it needs to be done. Somebody traveling from my office can either be paid out of my office or through the Department of Commerce or through the Compact. Either way, they don't gain any personal gain out of it, so whatever budget from which it comes is not really so significant. But most of the companies and most of the private citizens that go, or not most, all, have paid their own way and been very supportive of that. Why are we going after, let's say, foreign money or foreign investment is a very simple one right now. Oklahoma is very capital poor. We're having a tough time getting investment. And so if we're trying to diversify our economy, one of the ways you diversify it is you find somebody else to invest that you now can't find. Used to, we went to Dallas, or to Wichita, or to Chicago, and then to New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles. Now the banker may be in Tokyo or London.
This is headed toward Bill or anybody else, really, Bill, who wants to answer the question. It comes in from Guyman. The question is, if we have an industry in the community with an international trade potential in one or more countries, how do we go about identifying those markets? What's step number one, I guess, is what they're trying to say.
Very good. Bill, we have within the Department of Commerce, in our joint venture with the U.S. Department of Commerce, a total of 5 trade specialists. It's their responsibilities to know all of the programs that are available to assist and to counsel with the individual companies. If they'll simply call us in our offices in Oklahoma City or in Tulsa, we were able to provide that kind of service to counsel individually, either in their office or in our office. And I might also add, not just a matter of giving some advice and counsel, but also to provide them with hands-on information that they can literally take to the marketplace. You know, when we talk about assistance, oftentimes conversation is cheap, and that makes for an opportunity for us to say that in the program that Governor Nye was commended for this morning, the program is more than getting on an airplane going overseas. Mm-hmm. It is 20 educational seminars a year. It is one-on-one counseling with the individual companies across this state, and it is developing assistance in the areas of export licensing, export documentation, and in fact ultimately ending up taking them to the marketplace and then delivering them to our office people who can then deliver them to the ultimate buyer.
What would it cost me? I mean, is there a cost if I own a company in Oklahoma and I have a product I think I can sell on the international market? What is it going to cost me to get it on the international market?
Well, of course, it's going to depend on a case-by-case, but let's talk about government services. There's no cost to you, Bill, or as a manufacturer or any other manufacturer across the state for the counseling service. There's no cost to you for even implant training seminars for your employees. There's no cost to you for us doing basic market research. Those areas where you literally want something specifically done for your company, such as finding an agent or a distributor, there's a nominal cost involved in that. But, or if you want specific credit information on a company you're getting ready to deal with, yes, there's very small, minor cost involved in that. But for all intent and purposes, coming through the services that we have to offer, you can literally get into the international marketplace for nothing if you want to approach the marketplace in that direction.
Thank you, Bill. This is for Jim Malone. Have your company profit margins increased as a result of participation in trade missions and trade fairs?
A one-word answer to that is yes. Our level of profitability out of our European operations in FY86 were substantially higher than here, but that changes. And part of the advantage of having an international presence is economies in different parts of the world have cycles that are not necessarily tied into our own, depending on the kind of product that you're manufacturing. And as a result, by having an overseas investment base, you oftentimes are able to have counter-cyclical activities. You also have the advantage or disadvantage of foreign exchange rates. And as the dollar fluctuates, that has an impact, both positive and negative. But our experience is if you balance that, and if you're careful about the product mix that you establish, that on a continuing basis, it'll have a benefit.
Jim, thank you very much. This next question is directed to Annabelle. Annabelle, is a two-part question. I'll go ahead and read both of them. What does Oklahoma export in the area of agricultural products? I think we've already mentioned hard red winter wheat. And how do I sell my food product in the international marketplace? I guess he's looking for the procedures to follow.
We export almost 69 different agriculture products to 23 countries. This is wheat, cattle, cotton, beef jerky, different processed foods. How do they export? We do it by trade shows and trade fairs. We do them overseas and in U.S. And by contacting our office, telling us your product that you want to export, we take a look at it, decipher the area that it should be sold in, whether it's peanuts, pecans, or whatever. If it is the right trade show, as of in the United Kingdom, to Hong Kong, Foodex in Tokyo, we take this product with us, and we ask the company to go with us to these international trade shows. And we do not sell as a state agency, but the company can make sales right on the spot at the time that they are with us at these trade fairs.
Thank you, Annabelle, so much. I believe we have somebody on the phone now. I believe it's from our viewing site in Ardmore. Go ahead with your question. Who am I talking to?
This is Darrell Nick with National Business Consultants.
Nice talking to you. What is your question? Who is it for?
The question is directed to Jim Malone with Facet Enterprises. The question is, where did you obtain the information and the procedures to follow in expanding your business into a foreign market, and how long did it take from initialization to actual implementation?
Thank you very much, Jim.
That's not a simple question to respond to with a one-line answer. Let me say that if you're looking, assuming that your objective is to expand your market, the first thing you have to do internationally is no different than the first thing you have to do from a marketing standpoint domestically, and that is define the segment that you want to serve. And that seems like a very simple statement, but you know, and we all know, that isn't so simple. But I would say that it is not any longer a process to do it right internationally than it is domestically. You must define your market segment that you want to serve, and then you have to pick the channel of distribution. And if it's an automotive product, you have to decide whether it's a traditional WD kind of channel, and then you need to decide whether you want to use a direct salesman, a company employee, or whether you want to use manufacturer's reps, or whether you want to use a stocking warehouse. All those kinds of decisions that you would make domestically will also have to be made internationally. But that's where a quasi-governmental agency or a pure governmental agency, both here in Oklahoma and the company that you have targeted, is very important that you establish those relationships, because they can put you onto the people, they can help you ask the right questions, not only as it relates specifically to your business, but as it relates to the way you deal with that government and what that government expects you to do, so that you can then develop your plan. Does that respond to your question?
I don't know if they're still...
started.
Okay, there you are. Thank you so much. This next question, should we be selling our latest technology to foreign countries? We've gotten that several times. Governor or Jim?
Well, I'll comment on it. That I think Jim would more than nearly be able to comment on it. From my vantage point, that's the decision that each individual company has to make, whether or not the state's involved in trying to promote international trade or not. Each company obviously decides for itself what it wants to sell. Whether or not it should or should not sell. What I said a while ago is, like, we don't try to convince anybody to come to the United States. I don't go to London and say, you ought to come to the United States. I go to London and say, if you come to the United States, come to Oklahoma. That's up to the individual person to decide whether or not he's coming to the United States. I think the company decides whether or not they want to sell the technology to foreign or domestic people.
I would absolutely agree with that. It is an individual company decision. The questions you need to ask yourself, though, are, number one, does the receiving country or company that you're talking about selling or licensing your technology to, does it need that level of technology, and can it effectively use it? Maybe an older generation of technology is more suitable to a developing country than the leading edge technology. So that's one thing you need to consider. The other thing you need to consider is pure economics. What's the life cycle of the technology that you have here, and can you maximize your return by getting that level of technology into the hands of somebody else who can expand that market quicker? And but it really is very much an individual company decision, but there are a number of questions you need to ask yourself before you blindly let somebody else use your technology, because you can be assured that at some point in time, depending on the licensing agreements and the restrictions that you put on that technology, you're going to find it back in your marketplace.
Thank you very much. This next question comes from El Reno. How do I know if I have an international marketplace, I guess he's saying, for my product? Who do we go to first? Again, you, Bill?
Let Bill answer that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, again, that goes back to the counseling sessions with the trade specialist. There are a number of government statistics that are available in our offices, both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, which will give market trends, will give product types, extensive direct information. And then, coupled with that, we're getting leads from our foreign offices telling us that they have needs for various products or there's an interest in a particular product type. All of that combined together, the counseling session will bring out, yes, your product has a chance in that market, or no, it doesn't have a chance. It's a declining market for your particular product.
Thank you, sir, very much. We now have a phone call from Enid. Are you on the line? Hello.
Yes, I am, Bill.
Okay, go ahead. Your question, please.
Bill, this is Mike Mikowski.
Hi, Mike.
And I have a three-part question. First part is, how do Oklahoma communities become involved in the state's international trade programs? Second part is, what follow-up has the state done since the most recent trade missions? And how may individual communities access this information?
Boy, good questions, Mike. Thank you very much. Who would like to address the first one? Governor?
Can you remember the three parts?
I wrote them down, but I don't know if I can remember.
Give me the first one.
Okay, how? International trade. How do local communities become involved?
Well, first of all, they can become involved by simply contacting the Department of Commerce and saying that you want to be on the mailing list. I would suggest that a local community look around and see if they have someone who is already involved in international business and let them become a local spokesperson, so that if we wanted to have an international seminar in your town or you wanted somebody who could already talk the language internationally. Mainly you just say, we want to get involved. We repeatedly send out mailings to the local business community, particularly the Chamber of Commerce, saying we're going to have this mission or that mission. Do you want to be involved? Many chambers respond yes. Also, when we go on these tours, we ask the people to generally have the thrust of Oklahoma. And while you should be interested in Enid or Ardmore or Wayne or wherever you might be, we hope that you promote first Oklahoma. And then that if you make a contact while you're there for your community or for your company, that obviously you follow up on it. Our follow-up on the most recent trip, say, to England, Morgan Grenfell at the time is preparing a report for us and has delivered a report to me today just prior to this conference of what they've been doing since the follow-up. Of our trips to Japan, Mike Ichigo has followed up on prospects that we've had. The best example of a follow-up is that we've had several missions come to Oklahoma since our mission there. I think in a 3-week period we had 6 foreign missions looking at Oklahoma sites. Now the third part of the question, I don't recall. Is that all of it?
How about the individual? I think the next question was, how would an individual go about it?
The same way. The individual could just simply write the Department of Commerce, or a simple way right now is the Governor's Office, the state capital, Oklahoma City, and we'll forward it. We need your involvement. It's important to point out that we're not just talking about major companies. We're talking about small companies also, or people who want to get involved in creation of a new company. Everything starts from scratch. I also, as I listen to this, understand that there are probably a lot of people who are wondering why we're stressing so much international trade. Most of you who are there know that this is that seminar. So I wouldn't want everyone to think that we're just stressing the international trade. That's just a small part of our efforts in economic development. It just happens to be the road that we're talking about today. Also, it attracts different attention. When we announced Hitachi in Norman, it made headlines all across the state. Every newscast have talked about that investment. But at the same time, Telex, an existing industry, was expanding in Tulsa. A much more significant investment received very little notice from the media. So sometimes we don't have anything to do with the sexiness or the attractiveness of an issue. But it's just all a part of the diversification, as is tourism, as is movie location work, trying to create jobs in Oklahoma.
Thank you, Governor. Our next phone call is from Oklahoma City. Are you on the line? Go ahead.
Yes, this is Richard Clements in Oklahoma City. I have a question for Bill Moss. How can companies find out about upcoming trade shows, and how can Oklahoma companies get involved as exhibitors?
We publish a monthly newsletter that goes to all of the 3,500 manufacturers across the state that provides show information. Actually includes a total calendar of events on activities going on in Oklahoma, and then we specialized articles in that monthly newsletter that allows those interested in entering the international market to know when a trade show is coming up in a particular area.
We've had several calls about this, and everybody can join in this discussion. It's to Bill or Governor Nye. What state agencies or private sector groups can assist us in obtaining cabinet-level access in Ecuador? Everybody's talking about cabinet-level access. How do you go about that, and how do our mission offices help with that?
Well, Bill, I think I might answer that question if I could. Jumping out in front of Governor Nye here, but frankly, it is so important for the leadership of government, a governor, whether it's George Nye or whoever it is, a governor in a state, to take the lead in opening that international marketplace. As we said earlier in the teleconference, and I think our Foreign Office representatives will verify this, that when you're dealing on a government-to-government relationship, there must be some establishment, whether it's a friendly state relationship, a sister state, sister province, prefecture relationship, whatever it may be, educational exchanges, cultural exchanges, all of it begins with a good government-to-government relationship. And the leadership must come from the elected people in a state.
Governor.
I was sitting here listening with a great deal of interest and thinking about our experience in India. I grew up in McAllister, and I always had heard of Halliburton, and people think, well, Oklahoma can't be involved internationally. But my gosh, Halliburton's one of the largest international firms in the world. Phillips Petroleum, Conoco, I can name a lot of them, Telex now, and all the others. But as I was growing up, I always was aware of Halliburton, and I've always been impressed from afar at their size. And when we were in India on our first trade mission, they were not with us as Halliburton, but when I was in my room, I got a call that some people from Halliburton were there in Delhi and wanted to talk to me. And they came up to the room, and they said, we understand you're going to see the Minister of Petroleum. And I said, yes. And they said, we want to ask you to do us a favor. And I thought, gee, I wonder what this big favor is going to be. And they said, all we want you to do is to tell the Minister of Petroleum that Halliburton is a good firm. And I thought, here I am being called upon to vouch for Halliburton. I would have given anything had Halliburton over the years, been in a position to vouch for me. They just needed the entree. They needed the door open. And in the conversation with the minister, I kept waiting for an appropriate time, and that there was a lull in the conversation. I said, you may be familiar with some of our Oklahoma companies, et cetera, Phillips, Conoco, Telex, so forth, Halliburton. And he said, yes, Halliburton, we're dealing with them right now. A few days later, they got their appointment to talk to them. I don't know that we got them in a contract, but we got them in the door. I think what's important is that somebody from a government level in those countries to get into the cabinet, there needs to be some kind of official representative. Many times, a state representative can do it. A title is important. And so I would say a letter, if there is not a state official, a letter of introduction from a very prominent official will help you get into those doors.
Jim, you wanted to add something to that?
I do. One of the things that people in the United States or our private enterprise or system we take an incredible amount of pride in the separation of government and enterprise, if you will. And that philosophy is unique to the United States. There isn't any other country in the world that I've been to or done business with us that has the mindset of the separation of government and business. And we need to continue to develop the relationship here, not so much so that we can expand our own domestic markets and the way we do business here, because that's set by our laws and by our mores and by the standards in which we've developed a comfort level. But when you're talking about doing business outside your own borders, you need to understand that there is not that level of division that exists here. That in fact, almost any other country in the world, you're going to be enhanced if you have some way of relating your business activities to the governmental activities. And that's very difficult for people here in the United States to understand. But if you're going to be successful internationally, you've got to accept the fact that every place else in the world has a strong governmental influence on who does business with who.
Annabelle, you wanted to add something to the conversation?
Yes, also, Bill, by working with cabinet level, we work with the Foreign Ag Service out of Washington with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We call or telex the foreign ag attaches in the foreign countries if we may have powdered milk or whatever the product that we have to sell. And they give us the trade leads or they telex us, and in return we give them where they can buy this product and get the product moving in the right channels. So we have no trouble when we go through, as you'd say, the cabinet level of the U.S. or Foreign Ag Service.
So there's already a proven system we go through. As far as the countries that you ladies and gentlemen represent, what products or services are you looking for now for the people that are sitting there watching this? Anyone?
Could I just go back to
Yes, sir.
this point on government involvement? I was up in Beijing a couple of months ago, assisting in the signing of a loan agreement for a major power station. This was a nuclear power station just north of Hong Kong. We were the lead manager of that particular financing. And the interesting thing for me was I turned up and I had a meeting with the Premier of China, who's a fairly busy man, and ended up on television and my picture all over the front page of the newspaper. And I thought this was rather inappropriate, but he said to me, well, you're representing Britain. We look on you as, you may be a businessman, but you're, as far as we're concerned, you're a representative of your country. And vice versa, he said, that we look on government officials who come to see us as essentially representing the business community. And I think that's very important in certain countries. India must be the same, but it's certainly true in China that you have to have that, that political relationship.
Is there a certain product or service that some countries are looking for that we don't know about or somebody out there could pick up on?
I think in China, I guess most Oklahoman companies know what is required, which is very largely oil and gas-related equipment. As the governor mentioned, equipment to re-equip the airlines in China. Food, unfortunately not. I mean, China is a major food exporter itself, but processed food and packaged food is something that China doesn't have. If you look at the major investments that Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola have made in China, I think many more plants of that type will be set up, where America actually has a sort of packaging which the Chinese find very interesting and will help to market their own products both in China and also internationally.
This question we have several times, this one from Norman. What can be done to educate business and the general public about the importance of international trade to every Oklahoman? Because there are some who criticize, saying, well, maybe we shouldn't be out there. We ought to take care of everything at home.
I'm not hesitant to volunteer, so I think it's very critical that we get a more positive attitude in the mindset of Oklahomans about the international trade. It wasn't many years ago, there were a lot of people in Oklahoma didn't think we ought to be doing business in New York City or Los Angeles. Our first industrial tours to New York City received the same criticism that my industrial tours to Tokyo received. It was just years ago when I was lieutenant governor. We were very cautious about what we would do. But Oklahomans should think international. We are an international state. Unless you're Native American, in the past few years, you're an outsider who's come into here, you or your parents or your grandparents, certainly. I think we ought to be aware here in the center of the country that there is a global economy out there for us. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that we need to continue to build upon. And if we're looking at it as some kind of Pollyanna to solve our economic problems, it won't do it. But it's certainly one of those keys in our efforts of diversification. But frankly speaking, many people in elected position and in government are hesitant to support the international, just as they were hesitant many years ago to support an advertising program for the state of Oklahoma. It was tough to get something through the legislature to spend money in U.S. News and World Report to promote Oklahoma when we needed roads and highways and education and so forth. But if you got a product and you don't try to sell it, you're not going to sell it. So it's important that your elected officials receive encouragement to support economic development, not just by passage of legislation. And let me say, in regard to the legislative program, Oklahoma in these past few years have passed more pro-business legislation than any other state in the Union in one small period of time. But we've always had a reluctance of advertising. And if we're not out there promoting, whether it be in Dallas or Fort Worth or Houston or Chicago or London, they're not going to be thinking about Oklahoma or an Oklahoma product. One of our problems is the image of the state. Your company can do better internationally if those people already know of Oklahoma and already have a good impression of Oklahoma. Your company has a leg up if this state has a good image.
Governor, on that note, we'll just address a question to our trade representatives here. We'll just go right down the line. What is the current image of Oklahoma in your country, and what obstacles, if any, need to be overcome to increase exports into those countries?
Yes, as the Governor mentioned before, unfortunately, the popularity of the name of Oklahoma in Japan is still lower than the other states of the United States. Because, as I mentioned, the Oklahoma State has 28 states out of 50 states. And even though after the opening of office in Tokyo, 7 offices opened, including Louisiana or Arkansas and so forth. But I think in order to popularize the name of Oklahoma among Japanese people, the visit of the top government officials like the governor or lieutenant governor is very important. And also, I personally feel that some advertisement through media, like nationwide newspaper or TV, is very important.
Bill, as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, the focus is obviously on foreign direct investment, attracting international investment to Oklahoma. But as the governor said earlier on in today's teleconference, that the problem is not necessarily that Oklahoma has a bad image, but it has no image. And Governor Nye led to England at the end of September a highly successful business mission, which was a softening up exercise and did, as it were, it's an important step in putting Oklahoma on the map. And there were also important European bankers and other business people from continental Europe present at various investor presentations that were held. And so therefore, in answer to the question, action has already been taken, and that has been very useful in our own efforts, which are primarily, as I explained, to contact individual companies, and that, of course, is also a very important way in putting Oklahoma on the map. I think with what Oklahoma has to offer, that shouldn't be a problem. And indeed, perhaps I can expand on one or 2 points. You asked, there were two previous questions asked about what the role of the government was, and also what relevance was international trade, using trade in terms of investment. I think I get an impression that some people in Oklahoma do ask the question, what relevance has got foreign direct investment to them? Well, I think the answer is very simple. It relates primarily to the United States. Oklahoma is part of the most dynamic and largest economy in the free world, and as such, because of that, there has been an enormous amount of foreign direct investment pouring into the United States, about $20 billion a year. Very little of it to Oklahoma, and there's no good reason why not. And British companies in particular, my colleague Vili Okrusek and Mike Chigo can comment on Japan. We've looked at the areas that are the growth businesses that investment is taking place: publishing, electronics, to give some examples, medical products. And it is of direct relevance as far as we can see. Oklahoma offers a very good base and location for the U.S. market. And I hope that answers that aspect of the question. Just one final comment of this time, Bill, and that is Jim Malone referred to the commitment in the United States to the strict separation of business and government. But looking at it from the outside, what I think is one of Oklahoma's real selling points is, in fact, this very close alliance of business and the political leadership, and I think evidenced by here in Stillwater, the alliance of the business community and the educational system. And I refer specifically to the VOTEC system you have, which I think is an example to the world, and we don't have in Europe. So I think that practical example and the legislative action you've taken over the past few years is a very important plus point to attracting private investment to the state.
Speaking of that VOTEC system would back up investments from a country like this.
Well, let me tell you, the VOTEC system in the state of Oklahoma is something of which we all can be proud, and it's not just training people for skills, but it's training people for skills that are needed in new or expanding or industry, whatever it is. It's the #1 system. And wherever we've gone, people want to come here and study it. We can be proud of that. It is probably our secret weapon in economic development.
Governor, thank you. We now have a phone call. If you're still on the line from Duncan, go ahead, your name and your question, please.
Travis Bosley. We've hired a number of surveys and multinational firms to analyze the export potential of Oklahoma, and a reoccurring theme has been that we need to concentrate and identify the international expertise that we have available within the state, particularly in the private sector. So I was interested in finding out what more some of the foreign representatives might suggest that we could do in terms of training and developing the expertise that we have here in Oklahoma in terms of research and actual trade representation outside Oklahoma.
Answer? Anybody like to tackle that one? Go right ahead.
Bill,
sure.
I'm not certain exactly what he's referring to, but if he's talking about educational facilities that exist for training of for that kind of thing, OSU has an international development school. The new Center for International Development Studies, I think, is a proper description that will be located here at OSU, and the ripple effect that you get from that are just some examples that I know of in the state that can offer really any kind of academic work or practical work. The university system is able to direct, or the chambers, just any number of ways for somebody to say, I want to know more about this, and then it'll be provided for them.
The Department of Commerce has done several how-to export, how-to be involved. I would suggest that anyone who's interested in a training program, if we had the proper amount of responses right now from this teleconference, the Department of Commerce could put together within a month's period a program in which we could invite people to come in and do a hands-on how to do business in India. We've already had one of those conferences, how to do business, how to get somebody trained in the international marketplace. We're really prepared to respond to your response. One of the secrets, though, is to go to somebody in your community that's already been involved in the international marketplace and ask them just to give you the advantage of their experience. That's the best thing you can do.
Bill, in Tulsa, the Tulsa Chamber, I think it's the Chamber that has sponsored this, but there is a whole group of people of companies who do business internationally. And if somebody wants to try to do business internationally and they don't know how to do a bill of lading going into an Iron Curtain country, and there's a technique to do that. And our company and other companies provide somebody to go out and sit down and say, this is the way you do it. This is the way you fill out a form. How do you get an international letter of credit? How do you call that letter of credit? Well, clearly your banks can help you with that, but on a more practical standpoint, within the Tulsa Chamber, which I happen to be familiar with, there is a body of hands-on expertise that somebody can call and say, how do I do this? And somebody will say, step by step by step, this is what you have to do to get through that process.
So the basic bottom line is the information is out there. It's just a matter of go ahead and go get it.
We also in the Department of Agriculture offer this a free service on labels, processing, food additives, and work with the Foreign Ag Service. If we do not know, we can have that at your fingertips in just a few minutes. So this service is free to the public, and if we can't answer it directly, we'll have that answer soon through Foreign Ag Service.
What about, we've gotten several questions, one from Okmulgee, one from Stillwater. How do we find out, emphasize tourism, find out what attracts foreign visitors and what they might be interested in? Anybody like to tackle that?
Well,
go ahead, Governor.
I'll start.
You obviously.
Well, you know, I used to be chairman of Tourism and Recreation in Oklahoma. We've had a mixed bag here in Oklahoma, and we've not quite yet learned how to bring it all together in one program. I, for years, have wanted to have one common theme for the promotion of Oklahoma, nationally and internationally. The business community wants a modern Oklahoma, away from the old West. While proud of the West, they want a modern Oklahoma. The tourism industry, number one attraction is the lure of the West, the cowboy, the Indian, the Western heritage that we have. What we need to do is somehow mesh that those two themes into one and promote that. Of course, our lakes is very important. In tourism, we have the frontier lake theme. But tourism, I'm very proud to say, is the #2 industry in the state of Oklahoma today. And just today in the cabinet meeting, Abe Hesser, head of Tourism and Recreation, announced that we've just put together successfully an international package tour that's going to bring some group tours to Oklahoma in this next year. We've been missing out on the international tourists. They go to Texas, but they don't come to Oklahoma. It's the same thing in economic development. This country really has a bi-coastal economic development segment. There's the East Coast and the West Coast, and between the Rockies and the Appalachians, there's this great, vast Middle America that isn't doing in the international business like the East and West Coast. Same is true on tourism. They come into the ports of entry, and we have a difficult time getting them to Oklahoma. Mainly, they don't know about us. They don't know to even ask to come to Oklahoma. And if they did, where would there be a group tour? But we're crawling before we walk. And we've been making those steps, and this teleconference may be the impetus that in the future Oklahoma needs in the international global economy.
I mean, we've got the international with the waterway coming in. We can export and import very easily through that waterway. I mean, we're in the central part of the United States. people want to make a product here and ship it to other states around here or to major markets in between the two coasts. Now, switching in midstream here, we'd go to our India office. Question coming in, how can the India office facilitate getting an India import certificate?
Well, there are two kinds of import certificates or licenses, as we call them there. I do not know what in specific this company is referring to. If they need any kind of an import license or certificate, they're obviously dealing with an Indian company already. We can facilitate and help and guide that Indian company if there is something it is not aware of, in to which department they have to go, to how to fill out the forms, to how to deal with the application. There are, in order to promote the trade overseas, the government of India has set up specific offices which in one day are supposed to issue these licenses. Sometimes Indian companies are not aware of this, but we can certainly guide them.
This is for our London trade office. What types of Oklahoma industries are being targeted by British and European investors for investment? And do you detect a greater amount of interest in Oklahoma investment by such firms in the past few months?
Well, the answer to that question is twofold, I think. First of all, the areas in which British and European investment are actually taking place, and that's been an important consideration in our targeting work. And secondly, in terms of the companies we've been in contact with, the areas in which they're of interest. Taking the first aspect, the main areas in which British and European investment are currently concentrated are areas such as publishing, printing, electronics and telecommunications, distribution and retailing and wholesale increasingly, and medical equipment. All of those areas, Oklahoma, and specialty chemicals I should have mentioned, Oklahoma should be pretty well placed to take some part of that investment. Now, we've already been in contact with about 150 companies in the United Kingdom before we go on to further work in the United Kingdom and continental Europe. And so far we've had detailed meetings with about 20 companies, going through all their activities and seeing how they relate to Oklahoma. And to give you a flavor of the areas of interest, it has these initial work has given cause, I think, for pretty good encouragement. And I refer to diverse range of interests. Titanium refining, that has applications for the particularly aerospace and defense components. In greenfield investment for expansion, electronics components. Two areas of interest in specialized haulage, that's the transportation of bulk chemicals using Oklahoma as a transport hub. And then also in distribution, going back to the governor's point about the bi-coastal economy and British companies that are investing and seeking to expand distribution bases for this region of the United States. Further afield, in particular interest demonstrated in the cardiovascular drug research that has taken place in Oklahoma, and therefore there is a very encouraging range of interests. I think there's one point finally, Bill, I'd just like to make, and that is that roughly about two-thirds of the companies you've talked to so far have expressed interest in specific acquisition opportunities. That's good because it gives something tangible to go on and hopefully will result in something actually happening sooner rather than later. And about a third in what I call greenfield investment. I think that's particularly relevant because unlike Japan, where you have very large corporations that have really global strategies and have the strength and resources to do that, British companies and European companies are smaller. And therefore, they enter the US market primarily through acquisition. They buy established businesses. And that has a positive aspect. It releases capital here. And more importantly, 9 times out of 10, it's a base for subsequent expansion. And we're looking at a number of requests on that. I should have also mentioned cement and also concrete and RMC production facilities here in Oklahoma. So I hope that gives the questioner an idea of the range of interest that's already been expressed.
Well, thank you. This next one is to Bill Moss. Bill, somebody's asking, what are the relative costs of exhibiting in a trade show, and how far in advance must they commit, meaning the people who want to exhibit?
Well, as was said earlier in the show, it takes about 6 months generally to develop the recruiting process, booking the booth space in a trade show, and physically getting all the logistics handled. Frankly, in the most recent trade show in India, we as a Department of Commerce, made a conscious decision that we would, in fact, pay for the original booth space and then ask the companies to make a small contribution towards strengthening that effort towards promotion in the trade show itself. So those who were invited to come in, and when I say invited, all people were invited to participate in the trade show. Those who chose to participate, those 26 firms, had a fairly nominal cost in that particular case. Now, if they were to go into the show by themselves, that type of a show might cost for the booth space itself somewhere around $8,000 or $10,000, and then there are additional ancillary costs in building the booth space and so on. But a trade show is not, for a first-timer in the marketplace, is not something you want to try to do on your own. You should try to go with the Department of Agriculture or Department of Commerce into that as a first-time participant.
Okay, thank you, Bill. This is to John in our Singapore office. John, what food products and other items from Oklahoma might be of interest to the countries you represent?
Well, I think the Oklahoma is a long way from where we are. It took me almost about 20 hours to get down here, just to get out to LA. I think there is a market for beef, although we are importing quite a fair bit of beef from the state, the Texas side, I believe it is. The vegetable side of it may have a market, but I think in those two areas, one has got to be fairly competitive, to break into that market. Particularly the markets you've got to compete with are the Australian market, which are relatively close, and the New Zealand market, which are producing the same type of products. But I think our area would be probably more on the oil, gas and oil equipment and services. And although the governor has mentioned that the smaller companies should be looking more towards export, and I totally agreed with him. The major company, they have their own way of doing things. They have the capacity to do it. But I would like to see a lot of these smaller companies taking an interest in export in our area. There are trade shows that are coming up. There's a major one which is called the offshore trade show. Is, I believe, the second largest next to Houston. And in that trade show, I would like to see, say, Oklahoma representing in there, and together with the smaller company. Companies like Halliburton and Baker Tools, they're already working in our region. But the smaller companies are finding it a bit difficult unless the government of Oklahoma help them to come into our areas.
Governor, when is the next trade mission, and what are we doing to help those smaller businesses? Bill?
That's in the planning stages through the governor's international advisory team, and their annual work plan will be finalized sometime in the next 30 days, but it has not been set at this point, Bill.
Let me comment on the reason I was kind of hesitant. I don't think it's going to be between now and January the 12th, so it's not on my schedule. But I think it's important to point out that the governor's international advisory team and the governor's industrial team and all the other advisory councils are just private citizens like those watching, many of them probably watching right now, who through their company or through their personal corporation or through some industrial foundation participate in these missions. And so while we might call it the governor's trade mission to here or something else, the Commerce Commission's trade mission here, it really is just that we're the nucleus of putting it all together, and it's the private sector that generally makes it go. One of the concerns I have is we're talking about jobs, and talking about export and import. We're getting hit two ways in the loss of jobs. Let's take Firestone, for example, and we were talking about Goodrich earlier that closed down in Miami, and then Firestone is having problems. They're talking about imports. See, our businesses are hurt because we're importing. Our businesses are also hurt because we're not exporting. So we're getting hit both ways for jobs in Oklahoma. We're hurt from imports. We're hurt because we don't export. And so what we need to be doing is looking around while we're still helping existing industry find marketplace, still trying to put together financial packages. We need to be looking for ways to help keep those jobs in Oklahoma. And whatever does that, that's what we ought to be doing. We don't have all the answers on this panel, but I can tell you what, we've made a beginning here. These 5 offices that are here, 2 years ago we didn't have an office anywhere. Today we've got 5. 2 years ago you couldn't have gotten 10 communities interested in international effort. Today we have 23 participating in this teleconference. So let's just say we've made a beginning.
I mean, is there any way that an owner of an Oklahoma company could get some foreign sales without our offices or our trade missions?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Would it be more difficult?
Well, it would be more difficult, but they have their own offices. They have their own, many of the large ones have their own international division. They already have their international lawyers and so forth. And Phillips Petroleum was out there a long time before we had an international division. Halliburton was out there a long time. And Fassett went to India without us. We just went there together. That was kind of a coincidence. But now we're working together to try to continue it. They can do their own, but the small people, the small companies, are those that want to start. For example, if they want to find out if their product can be sold, they can come to us, or they can write these people direct or ask us, and we can forward their information. So if a guy is sitting somewhere in Oklahoma saying, well, how do I get in touch with these people? Don't worry about their names. You remember Bill Moss's name, or you remember the Department of Commerce. That's all you have to remember. And say, put me in touch with the guy in Singapore, put me in touch with the lady in India, or put me in touch with our office wherever it is. And we can do that. And if you're saying, how do we get an entree if there's not a trade mission? How do we get into a company? These 5 offices in areas where they are assigned will help you to try to get into that company. So you don't need us. We can be the conduit to them. But you don't have to have a trade mission. We don't have to have 50 people going to London. Just one guy or a letter. And let me sneak in language. We need to encourage more foreign language in our high schools and in our colleges, because we're at a disadvantage because we expect everybody to speak English. And it really helps us if you've got somebody who can correspond or talk in their native tongue.
Thank you, Governor, very much. We have a call from Tulsa. Are you still on the line?
Yes, I am, Bill.
Your name, please?
Jack Weissenberg from Tulsa.
Nice to hear from you.
This question really can go to Governor Nye and Jim Malone and Leela Singh and Keith Howard and John Cheek, because it deals with Oklahoma's image in these countries. And what is our image in the various countries?
Jack, I don't know that the image of Oklahoma as such is a factor specifically in any single company doing business, other than that it is a part of a state that is, or that it comes from a part of the country where the government, the state government or the local government entities are supporting the company's effort. And Jack, I'd be hard pressed to describe what a specific image of Oklahoma is, other than that as you do business and as you use the the facilities and the resources that are available through the efforts of the Department of Commerce and the other governmental agencies, the people that you're dealing with there, the people that we're dealing with, or anybody, understand that the state government and state agencies are supporting. And I think in most cases they're surprised at that level of knowledge and at that level of interaction. So I guess that would be the way I would address the issue of image. Does that mean that that's the way it should be? No, I don't think so. I think that it would be advantageous if it were possible that within business segments in Europe, Oklahoma carried with it an image that was proactive and action-oriented and one that was conducive to business. That image is far better than no image, but I can also assure you that no image is far, far superior to a bad image.
Willie, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because I see image very much as a important thing in the other side of opportunities that we've discussed a moment ago, namely the reverse investment. In other words, foreign companies wanting to come to Oklahoma to set up manufacturing facilities or other facilities here and creating jobs here. I think that's where the image factor becomes much more important than on, say, a Oklahoma company doing business overseas. But I think talking about Japan in this respect, I think despite the very considerable efforts which Mike has done so far, I think there's still a lot to do, and I think it's far to go. I would also add that in this case, it's probably also a thing which is very much a consequence of the particular setup of a country, of its trading psychology, of the way it transacts. And I think that is one of the things which I would like to mention here, because it's of great importance to try to understand that as well. I mean, things, especially big things, don't go just from today to tomorrow. And as the governor said a moment before, I mean, we crawl before we walk. But it's important that these efforts continue, and that at the end of it, hopefully, good image prevails.
Yes, ma'am, you wanted to add something over here.
Well, I thought since my name was mentioned in the question, I'd like to give a little bit of an answer.
All right.
In India, the image of Oklahoma is extremely positive, because the mere fact, as I said, all these firsts are there, that the governor came and we have the office, the first state to open the office, we have this participation in this trade fair, is being taken as a very, very positive step by the Indian general public and the business community. And one of the things which I think which contributes to this feeling of mine is that after the trade fair, I've had a great number of calls from people who say that I am an OSU alumni. I am an ambassador of goodwill of Oklahoma. What can I do to help you promote Oklahoma? So I want to just say that in India, it's definitely very, very good image.
You know, that's a subject we haven't talked about. One of the great untapped resources that we have are those alums that we have all around the world, whether it be Native American or their nationalists may be actually, say, in India or Japan. And I'd forgotten that, Mrs. Singh. I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the states, I think it was Ohio, Mike, that the governor flew in and they had a big reunion of all the alums of every university in Ohio. And then they said, you owe us something. You owe us something. And they started working their traps through that former student body. And that's something I'd even forgotten about. But our universities are very international. And I think that's, these communities, for example, there may be available to them an OSU or an OU alum over there that would be more than willing for a small remuneration to try to do some legwork for them around over there.
So it's very important. I guess we could sum up, Bill, and Governor and everybody else on the panel, that it's very easy. It's made very easy for businesses to get into international trade if they just go to the source. For example, your agency.
I hate to say very easy. I would say easier.
Easier.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
That precisely was going to be my response, too. I wouldn't say we can make it easy because, in fact, Bill, I think we have to caution by saying that, frankly speaking, exporting may not be for every Oklahoma company. We don't sit here today saying that this is the panacea for all of our economic woes. We simply say we have, through the good help of the legislature and the leadership in the state and through the federal government, the assets to make something happen if it can happen, and give us the opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show. Is there anything, Governor, you'd like to summarize with?
Well, I think it would be important to summarize by saying that this is a partnership, that the government and the private sector are partners, and I particularly want to mention the name Chamber of Commerce and Industry because they've also been co-sponsor of several of our international trips. It's not just the state. Sometimes we'll say the Department of Commerce, the Governor's Office, and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They have been a very strong part of our efforts, particularly in the last couple of years. And I want to express my gratitude to the state chamber and the local chambers and the foundations. It's a joint effort. It takes a lot of time. It is not necessarily fun. There are a lot of people who think this is a big junket. I've seen that many times in print. I heard it on the news that it's a junket. I'll tell you this: in the junkets that we've taken, everybody worked harder than they've been at home. Not that they were digging ditches, but at the time, it takes from Singapore. It took him 20 hours to get here. So you go, say, to Japan for 4 days or 5 days, and you lose a day, you gain a day, your system's out of whack, but you're up at the crack of dawn and you're out until late at night, and you're not just partying and having a good time. Now, you enjoy it, but you come home exhausted. This is not easy work. But everybody pulling together is just another example of the legislature, the Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, the private sector, the chambers of commerce. We ought to be concentrating on the things that pull us together, not that pull us apart. And one of the things that is a common thread is jobs. And that's what this seminar and all the other seminars that we have is all we're concerned about. Oklahomans at work in Oklahoma.
Governor, thank you very much. To close out our teleconference, we turn to Ralph Rhodes, president of Oklahoma Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and immediate past chairman of the board of the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
As you have just seen, Oklahoma is part of a world economy. Each of us must be willing to change many of the old ways of doing business if this state is to compete effectively as a world-class state. I was privileged to be part of trade missions to Tokyo and London and saw firsthand the importance of these centers of international finance and trade. Relationships must be established for building the state's share of the international market, and Oklahoma's story must be told to overseas investors who can provide much-needed capital for economic expansion. I'm very encouraged by recent developments here in our state. The Economic Development Summit, sponsored by the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Industry, brought together business leaders, educators, and government officials in a new partnership to find ways to get Oklahoma moving again. The State Chamber is reviewing the recommendations of Oklahoma 2000, the research arm of the State Chamber, the Academy for State Goals, and from Belden Daniels, the consultant to the Oklahoma legislature. From these reports, a comprehensive program of work will be put into action for 1987. This teleconference itself is a good example of the rapid acceleration in technology going on throughout the world. As the international economy hurdles from the industrial age to the intelligence age, Oklahomans must be prepared. Only through innovation, risk-taking, and entrepreneurship can Oklahoma attract and capture its fair share of international finance and markets. Your participation in this teleconference indicates an interest in Oklahoma's future. I hope you will join in working for a better business climate, which will mean more and better jobs for all Oklahomans. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much. Now, Mr. Jim Malone, some closing thoughts from you, Jim.
Well, I think the essence of this symposium, if you will, and everybody's interest in this ultimately rests upon individual initiative. And we've talked a great deal about the governmental involvement and the importance of it and how it can help you and how it can lead you and how it can guide you. But ultimately, the success in international competition and international business, whether it be importing or exporting, depends on the company's initiative and their value added and what they bring to the table and how they interact with the people that they're doing business with or how you're doing business with. And that, in sum and substance, is what will make your efforts internationally a success or a failure. And you're going to have failures, and you'll probably have a number of failures before you have success. but that's no different than any other business domestically that I've ever been involved with, and I'm sure that you've ever been involved with. So I would urge you to use the resources that are available, but remember that ultimately you are responsible for the success that you will enjoy with your partners in different parts of the world.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the panelists who are with us this afternoon, and thank you to you folks at home who are, rather in our 23 locations who are all part of this. We hope you have learned something, and then we hope we've started the ball rolling for many of you as far as your business goes. We thank you all, and have a pleasant day.
You Can Profit from International Trade was produced through the cooperation of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Oklahoma State University Center for International Trade Development, and University Extension, Oklahoma State University.